We are excited, Jean-Philippe and I. So we are here for the podcast. And as you know, we are covering that book, Super Communicator. So Jean-Philippe, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you like this book?
10 out of 10. Really, actually, like communication has always been something that I'm interested in. And now trying to explain like those strategies and understand how I'm doing those things is so interesting. So I think it's going to help me, but also help our audience.
I hope so. So yes, so we learned so much, and every time that we read, we can make connection with our life and our with our past experience, and I hope you too. So yesterday we talked about conflict, how we try to control other people, and when we try to control other people it doesn't work. Sometimes it could lead to divorce. So this is what we talked yesterday, and we talk about how when we try to control our people in our MLM, so it's not good either, and we lose a lot of people. So and last Tuesday, we talk about the looping. So I don't know if you understand. So let me do a quick reminder about looping. So it's a technique that allowed you have incredible conversation. So if you remember, we talk about that story that they try to reunite people that they have extreme position. So let's say if we ask, what do you think about having a gun or not? Okay. So in the US, it's very polarized. Okay. So we have a lobby of pro gun. Okay. And we have anti gun advocate. So, and it's impossible to have a conversation between those two because there is so much polarization, and with all those events happen in the United States, so it's very difficult. But one group decide, yes, we want to have that kind of conversation, and if we want to let them discuss, we have to help them. We have to give them tools that they are going to use to make sure that they understand and they listen others, and they listen really, not just listen and having their staying on their position. Okay, so they learn how to do looping. Okay, so we call it looping for understanding. It's an active listening technique that involve proving that the other person really understand and truly heard what you said. It's not just doing okay. It's not saying I understand. Okay, it's showing that you understood by paraphrasing them, asking for confirmation. Okay, so let's say you ask. So there's three steps. It's easy. Number one, it's you let the person express themselves. Okay, and then you ask an open end question. Okay, you don't you let them answer. Okay, and that question has to be open. Okay, you don't know the answer. It's not like a piège. It's not something that you want
To trick them.
to trick them. Yeah. Okay. Number two, you have to summarize what you heard in your own words. And number three, you ask for confirmation. Did I get that right? Okay. And you repeat until the other person say yes. And it proves that you are really listening. So it's going to help you to, diffuse conflict. And it works just as well with your spouse or with your colleague, because when you are doing this, so you are showing that you understand. So would you like to do an example with me, Jean-Philippe?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm
Go
going
on.
to ask you a question, you answer. Okay. So let's say you are anti-inventory, okay, consultant, and me, of course, I have an inventory, so I am a pro. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, okay, if I want to understand why you don't want an inventory, so I'm going to ask you an open-end question. So what exactly worry you about this inventory idea.
Yes. So the way I will answer it is, I'm afraid we'll become like a regular store, that our consultant will feel forced to invest some money at the beginning, especially if they start when they have no money, and that we kind of lose like our soul because we're so focused on managing the inventory.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you fear that an inventory would transform our culture. Okay, that consultant would feel forced to invest money. Sometimes they don't have, and maybe lose some money. Is it that? Did I get right?
Yes, that's it exactly.
Okay, so now she confirmed. So now we can continue to have that kind of conversation, and we're going to repeat the looping. So it's going to help us to show that I understand, and I understand him, and I heard correctly.
Yes, exactly. And the reason why we want to get back on the looping, it's because in the example that we are going to give you today, we are going to need that technique. Okay. So if you remember last week, we talked a lot about like that not that debate, but that discussion between the anti and pro gun. Okay, so you remember probably like David Preston, the woman like who slept with her gun. So we saw that people were like in complete opposite, but actually they were able like to get emotional. But what happened after the conference that they had in Washington is that everybody get back at their home, and the experiment does not stop there. Okay, they continue the conversation on a Facebook group, but on that Facebook group, a lot of people did not attend the conference and did not receive the training about the looping. So what did happen? Okay, John Goffrey, okay, you remember that cop that owns like between 30 to 40 guns. Just saying it sounds so weird, okay, like to me. Like he said that I went home, I went online on that Facebook group, and it took maybe 45 minutes for somebody to call me a jackbooted Nazi. Okay. And Melanie Jeffcoat, you remember the one that had that her daughter that lived through like a shooting at school, but wasn't like finally like real. Like she said that I flew back, got on Facebook, and everything fell apart. So why actually conversation like that works in person can explode online? Okay, so this is what we want to look for today. So we are going to ask ourselves the question. Okay, so is it possible, okay, like married couple, to have those discussion on online and be sure that they don't fail at it?
Yeah.
So, oh yes, you want to go?
No, no, no.
No, okay, 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 okay. So, as I said, the experiment continued on Facebook. So, on that Facebook group, about 150 people were in that private group. And for 4 weeks that the experiment continued, they had more than 50,000, yes, 15,000 posts in 4 weeks. Can you imagine, Sylvain?
Yeah. But the problem is, the majority of the participants are new. This is like a new group, and they didn't have the training that the other people receive with the looping, and so of course it's gonna be real life. Okay, they are going to tell names and everything.
Exactly. So things goes off like very quickly. People insult each other. They use like the word Nazis, fascists, idiots. One participant write, "You're too stupid to understand my argument because I guess you were too busy doing drugs and having sex in college rather than learning to think." So can you imagine, like, okay, receiving something like that? So the moderators that were like the researcher, okay, they discovered that their technique worked less online, okay, that looping, okay, and they noticed the same problem, okay, as in like the marriage that we've identified, that we've talked yesterday. So people are trying to control each other.
Yes, some people they try to control what it's allowed to say. Okay, which opinion are permitted and which are not. What emotion can be expressed and what not. Okay, so let's say I'm going to give you an example. So one people can write, "It's ridiculous to say that you're scared because your neighbor had a gun." Okay, you should not feel that way. Okay, so he tried to decide how I can feel. Okay, other try to control who can speak. Okay, I'm not all interested in what men have to say. I want to hear from other women. So she decide, no, men cannot express themselves, only women. Okay, and sometimes people don't even realize they are trying to exert control. They think they just giving their opinion, but the other person perceive it as an attempt to force the direction of the conversation.
Yes. So what happened following that? Okay, so the moderator actually had to find a solution. Okay, so they decided like to do exactly what we've covered yesterday, like in the marriage research. Okay, so they tried to push people to focus on those three things. Okay, so if you remember yesterday, we've talked about controlling ourselves. Okay, controlling the environment and control the boundaries of the conflict. But those has to be things to be controlled by both of the people that are like arguing right now. So by controlling themselves, okay, they say that when you feel triggered or angry while you're writing or reading a post or an opinion of somebody, they say just take a break, take a deep breath, okay? And if you find yourself, okay, feeling defensive, step back. Okay, so we all know that sometimes we write, okay, too fast than our brain can think, and we can regret it right after. So they say if you feel that anger, just take a step back. Second, control their environment by the word they were using. So they were asking people, they were trying to coach them to avoid divisive term like police state, freedom warrior, Nazis, fascists, like, you know, those polarizing words. So they say use less polarizing language. So this is how you can control the environment. And finally, control the boundaries of the conflict. Okay, he said that I want to remind everyone that this is not a debate with a goal of scoring points. Okay, so just stay on one topic at a time instead of trying to add many elements. And what they discover is by teaching them, okay, that technique, okay, that it actually improved the conversation and people were attacking less each other. And even one participant at some point, right, he said, my stance on guns hasn't changed, but my approach to the gun conversation definitely has. Okay. So he said that now he's able to have more conversation and less, like it is a bit less difficult than it was before. So yes, those three elements, things that you can control, can improve a lot the discussion, especially in a subject that is that divisive.
Yeah. So remember that guy who is owning like 30 gun. Okay. So that police officer. Okay. And the other one is she is an anti-gun activist. So Melanie. So the one who are
Daughter.
daughter experiment like a shooting at school. Okay, so he noticed that that lady Melanie, so she received a lot of attack. Okay, so he say, okay, I'm gonna call her and I'm going to make sure that everything is okay. And they say, okay, you know what, we need to make a plan because I see that a lot of when you write, a lot of people they are going to attack you. So I want to help you and I want to support you. Okay, so the next day, so they do like something like to make sure that they are going to have a good reaction. So the next day, the lady post in support of red flag law. So it's a law that allow police to remove gun from people with who are dangerous. Okay, she knows it will provoke reaction when she write. So she said something about this, and guess what happened?
So what happened? Like obviously it was a plan, but it
Yeah,
was a plan like to control those three elements that we've just talked. Okay, so Godfrey, the one that owning the gun, like respond before anyone else, and he says, as a police officer and a gun rights supporter, there have been many times I wish I could take a firearm from someone who pose a danger to themselves or other. So that pro-gun guy said, okay, and even a policeman, okay, he actually kind of said the contrary of what he's supporting. So then he write that he'd like to hear people experience on this specific aspect of the debate. So by doing this, okay, by sharing and testimonials and by asking for other testimonials of people, he kind of shaped the environment and the boundaries of the conflict. So people can not just say that you're stupid, they have now to share. So what they did realize is instead of arguing, they were starting to use looping. And this is what Melanie has been using. Okay. So she summarized what others were saying throughout their testimonials, pro and anti-gun. Okay. And very quickly, people start to share their stories. And they admit that the issue is complex, and even there is a lot of nuances that sometimes you cannot take side. Okay, it's not black, it's not white, sometimes it's gray. Okay.
of course. So to summarize, sometimes people don't know how to listen. Okay, they think listening means debating, but listening means letting someone tell their story, and even if you don't agree with them, trying to understand why they feel that way. Okay, and we had so many examples in the book that we can understand when we put anti-gun and gun, pro-gun inside, so they have to listen to understand their past. And this is something that when you really listen, uh, you can better understand why they have this position. You don't have to be agree, but you have to, you know, um, make sure that you understand and you feel okay with that.
Yeah. So one of the example that came from that discussion throughout the book, one of the participant, okay, Helen Cohen, okay, that is an anti-gun activist, okay. She said that, okay, I'm going to a march against gun, okay, and like they were seeing people, okay, throughout that march with big sign, okay, on poster saying the NRA. The NRA is, by the way, probably like the biggest lobbying like for gun in United States, and it's one of the most powerful even like throughout the world. Like it was written, the NRA is evil. But like she said that a few months ago, I would have carried that sign, okay, saying that the NRA is like evil. But she said that throughout the discussion that happened in the on the Facebook group, okay, and discovered John Godfrey, the one that is pro-gun, okay, the cop, okay, she said, I cannot say that about him because he is a good person. So sometimes you won't agree on like the subject that you won't have like a yes or a no, and you probably won't change your mind, but you will change your perception of the people that are part of both sides. So that was really interesting to say that I cannot say that the NRA is evil because that man, even if like we probably won't agree on that, is a good person by what she has discovered about him.
Yes. So the result was mixed. Okay, not everyone changed their mind, but some stay in their position. Okay, other person left the group. Okay, but for some, the experience was profound. So one participant, right? I use what I've learned here in the Facebook group, and I use those skills in other areas of my life. I'm more tolerant when talking to people with different point of view. So of course, if we are listening and we try to understand what the other people live and why they have those kind of position, so maybe we're gonna be more tolerant. And that guy with all those guns, so John Godfrey, he still own dozen of guns. He voted twice for Trump, but since the experiment, he's gotten into the habit of calling his Melanie. So every few months, even if they are very at the extreme point, she is anti-gun, he is pro-gun. Okay, but they just want to catch up and hear about them and the news. And he say, it's a complicated world. Okay, you need friends who are different of you if you want to figure it out the world.
Yes, exactly. So, what are our takeaway from all of this? Okay, so first of all, okay, as we've covered, the control is the poison of conflict. When you try to control opinion and how people should react, okay, so when you try to control what other person are allowed to say, think, or feel, you poison everything. Okay, and second, the solution is not to control others, but is to control yourself. Okay, remember to slow down, to breathe, to choose the right moment. Okay, so controlling the environment. Remember, so if you're tired, this is not the time to have an argument. Okay, and don't let a disagreement contaminate every other aspect of your life. So if you're talking about an event, let's say at like choosing the family vacation, don't bring another subject in the discussion, okay, for couples. So you should not mix those elements, just to be sure that the conflict is not exploding and like going in every direction.
Yeah. So now you are reproaching him something he did like 3 years ago. So no, no, no. Okay. So sometimes the conversation we're not going to change position. So usually people they have conviction. Okay, and this is not the goal. But if you are okay to discuss them and to put you in the shoes of the other people and understand what they have to say, so maybe it's going to change your approach of the conversation. And that was the goal of that podcast, to explain that, okay, having your own position, it's okay, but try to understand the other people and use the looping. So it's hard to metabolize another person perspective in just one conversation. You have to revisit that conversation again and again and again to better understand.
Yes. So this week, okay, so try to look at conversation that you may have with people on things that you disagree with, okay? And instead of saying, okay, I disagree, so I want to convince that person to change her mind, ask yourself, okay, am I trying to control what they're allowed to say, or am I really controlling what I'm saying? Okay, can I control myself? Can I slow down? Can I breathe? Can I choose a better moment? Okay, and can I use looping? Okay, by asking question, let them talk, okay, to express what they really think, summarize, and then ask if you really understand. This will help you really control the boundaries of the conflict and focus on one aspect and one element at a time.
Yeah. So that podcast made me realize that sometimes we can be polarized, but it's important to heard different opinion. Okay, and I think I would be a better person now, because if, let's say, I meet someone like a Trump supporter, or someone here in Canada who has is more from the far right. Okay, so I would try to ask question and better understand their position, and it is not going to make me change my point of view, but maybe I would be better for listen and understand the other one, and have that having that example that John, the policeman, called Melanie every couple of months, and they just try to uh, continue that connection that they have. Okay, so to this week, this is your goal. So make sure to continue the conversation and use the looping with your people. So thank you for listening to the podcast today. And we are going to see you next week with chapter